Welcome back to Coffee with Yvonne, a show for creators and entrepreneurs. I'm Yvonne Pearson, your host, and Darling, the founder of Pink Dollhouse Marketing. And on today's show, we're going to talk about one of my new favorite reality series. No, it's not The Real Housewives of Atlanta. No, it's not Baddies or nothing like that. It's actually a real competition series. We're going to be talking all about On Brand, NBC's newest show with Jimmy Fallon and Bozoma Saint John. And on this show, in terms of the Marketing Magic episode, we're not going to be shady. We're going to focus on important things about the show outside of who competed on there or, things like that, like, the brands that were featured. We're going to talk about key things to help improve the show, what they, got right already with the show's format, and also what I would like to see, not comparing notes, but adding a little razzle dazzle from popular competition shows centered around creativity that have gotten it right. So grab your coffee and let's chat. That's good. Okay, so to give you background information about On Brand, if you haven't seen it, it's okay. The first season just wrapped. So On Brand is a reality competition show that is centered around marketing and creativity. And when I saw the announcement go up, I was like, finally, a show for me, Cause watching on them baking shows, I ain't gonna cook. I ain't gonna cook. Project Runway, I could barely sew a button. I've tried to sew a button, but then and the loop and trying to close it, and then my button be looking all dangly. So that didn't work. Yeah. And then top model, I didn't get the height I was supposed to get. They said I was supposed to be 5'10" plus. I stopped at 5'7". But On Brand finally felt like a show centered around the creativity and field of marketing that I work in day to day and have been in for over a decade. So the background about the show On Brand brings the best and most creative across various industries, even those who do not work specifically in marketing in their day-to-day role. You have people like Professor, you have people who are realtors, swim instructors, all different people who come from different aspects of the industry, including the new parts of the industry like content creators. Now, what I did love about the show is they did bring in one of the baddest in the game, Bozoma Saint John. Can we give her flowers real quick? Can we get badass Boz her flowers? Because the way this woman is my inspiration, my vision board for a Black woman in marketing, yes ma'am, she clears. She clears every time. And if you're not familiar with Badass Boz, outside of how people were really introduced to her, which is Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Bozoma Saint John is a trailblazer in the industry. Not only is she inducted into the American Marketing Hall of Fame, she is also someone who has been a CMO, chief executive, all the things for some of the biggest projects I have seen come across my timeline, like Apple Music. She has worked for Uber. She has worked for Netflix. She has worked for a plethora of companies and owns her own companies as well underneath her personal brand portfolio. In general, bring her on as CMO of the show was a very smart and strategic move by Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy Fallon, as you know, is a comedian and host of It's the Tonight Show. I think that's his show. But he created this agency called On Brand, which is a creative marketing agency centered around driving campaigns for big companies. And more importantly, this show highlighted the field of creativity and marketing because there is this perception that marketing is a very easy field to get into. Marketing, like a lot of industries, and I'm not trying to make, marketing seem as serious as something like the sciences, but similar to the sciences, you can do a lot of things with a marketing degree that don't always involve you being in front of the camera as a content creator or an influencer, because there is a difference. There is a difference between content creators and influencers, but there are different roles in marketing that help drive campaigns forward of people you may never see but are doing the day-to-day work. For example, in my industry, the sciences where I work, I lead a lot of campaigns that are global campaigns. You may never see me, but you know my work. So to give you background information from Forbes, they did a really great article in which they interviewed Bozoma Saint John ahead of the show dropping. And the show essentially is a achievement of success with unscripted competitions. It speaks of various genres that they have done, NBC, the network, that include music, The Voice, American Ninja Warrior, Shark Tank, which is one of my favorite shows. It's like going to business school every week. I've been watching since I graduated from college, and I've learned a lot about the basics of business and entrepreneurship from Shark Tank. Also, it represents fresh ground, especially in an era where every viral TikTok is feels like it's disguised as a campaign. For advertisers, the timing is serendipitous. Marketing budgets have shifted dramatically towards digital storytelling, influencer partnerships, and experimental activations. If you don't know what an experimental activation is, it's essentially when a brand does a pop up of like at a festival, or you have something that like a pop up at a mall in like a temporary space. Brands that don't normally have a presence there. But because there is a tie in to their audience or a product that they're looking at launching, they choose to do an activation in that space to help drive engagement and hopefully to drive sales, and also to test the market to see if there's legs for a permanent placement. To close out the blurb from the article, St. John's participation also underscores how blurred the line between corporate leadership and cultural influence has become. She's not only a marketing executive, but also a personality with a growing presence on reality TV. Her dual role, executive mentor on Brand and cast member on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, suggests a new archetype for business leaders, executives who are as comfortable on screen as they are in the C suite. And before we get into the contestants for the show, to talk a little bit about that blurb, it is very true. The role has shifted. No longer is it cool just for you to sit at your desk, but marketing executives or executives in general have to be charismatic on camera. They have to be able to talk to broader audiences and simplify the work that they do so people understand the importance of their role. It's also great for the brand to leverage people on their team to show that authenticity as well as that value of what they bring in the market for their product, their service, or anything that they're offering underneath their umbrella. So let's get into those contestants. There were 10 contestants in total. You had Elijah Bennett, Piper Blue, Sabrina Burke, Bianca Fernandez, BT Howe, Lauren Kawasaki, Azelle Wade, Ryan Wynn, Dr. Rajesh, and Mahiri Takai. And more importantly, what I loved about the on-brand casting for this, there was not only diversity in the cast, but there was also age diversity. Marketing has sometimes gotten a bad rep with being focused solely on the next generation coming up. First, they were all about us millennials, right? They were like, millennials, millennials, millennials. Why are they buying avocado toast? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? Millennials, millennials. Now it's all about Gen Z. And as Gen Z continues to grow up, the feeling has shifted now to Gen Alpha as the next set of consumers in the market. So marketing as a cycle continues to focus on what's next, what's new, what's young, what's innovative. However, what marketing does get wrong sometimes is they forget or put less of a push into their older markets. Older markets are people who are like, my mom, the baby boomer market. They're financially comfortable. A lot of times they own their own home. They're about to retire. They have more disposable income. They're empty nesters. That market sometimes is not marketed as heavily as, say, the Gen Z market. The Gen Z market, which is living right now between young adults or people who are still in like high school, they don't have the full disposable income yet to be making those kind of level of decisions. They're still, depending on their parents' budget here and there, or just starting in the workforce where they may not have it as much as their millennial parents or boomer grandparents. More importantly, what I like too is by showing that age diversity, you show a range of experience. It's not always about the person who has the new, hip, fresh ideas. It's about people who have that experience and people you can lean into for the experience. Because sometimes what's new isn't always great. Sometimes things like, older marketing tactics are still considered tried and true in a lot of spaces. Billboards are still relevant. Print ads are still relevant. Things are still relevant in today's market despite the digital and now AI era we have entered. So let's talk about those brands that they partner with. It's brands that you have heard of in your day-to-day life. You have Dunkin' Donuts, Southwest, Pillsbury, Marshall, Sonic, to name a few. And also you had the final one, which was Therabody. It was a total of about 10 different brands, and which those different brands you were introduced to the CMOs or executive leadership for the marketing team. Each competition was structured like this. You had a marketing creative brief, sorry, not a marketing brief. That's my day-to-day job, my bad. You had a creative brief. You also had a pitch piece of the competition. So all the creatives using the creative brief were invited to create a pitch for the client. And then at the end of the pitch piece of the competition, 2 creative leads were selected. Those 2 creative leads would then go head to head to have their concept brought to life by the brand itself. At the end of that, then you have the person who actually won the account and also won Innovator of the Week to see their campaign brought to life. So essentially, it was structured in that way to show you what it takes from pitch to ideation to completion. At the end of the competition series, Bianca did end up winning Innovator of the Year. My personal favorite for the competition actually was Ryan and Mahiri. Lauren was also a favorite as well. Bianca winning Innovator of the Year was really great for her because she was a clear favorite from the beginning and a front runner. She led a number of the creative leads for the competition, and she was also someone who was quick on her feet. Now, in terms of showcasing other talents for the show, I do wish they would have leaned in a little bit more to other people who were featured instead of focusing solely on Bianca. We knew Bianca was a favorite from the beginning. There were already rumbles in the social media streets that she was going to win because of her experience working with bigger brands. The others in the competition who did not have that experience, it didn't seem to me as balanced, but we'll get into that a little bit more in our marketing takeaways about feedback for improving the show. So, for those marketing takeaways, let's talk first about telling a more compelling story about the contestants. And if you see me looking down, I'm looking down at my screen because I bring notes to the conversation. For telling a more compelling story, we never really fully learn about the contestants themselves. We were introduced to them, but unlike other competition shows like Project Runway, Top Chef, even Shark Tank, we learn a bit more about their personal stories and what has driven them and gotten them to that place. By never being truly introduced to creators, we weren't really able to buy into who they were as contestants. And when it comes to being on shows at that level and that platform, what you do after the show is more important than who you are on the show. Those shows are supposed to open up even bigger doors for opportunities. By not having a chance to even have a background about, you know, each of their individual stories, maybe do a hometown visit or things like that, a confessional in which you really got to learn the meat and potatoes of who they were instead of maybe just a mention here or there. I really couldn't fall in love with the contestants the way I did watching shows like Project Runway or even back in the day like Top Model, where we were highly invested in the girls or people featured on the show winning the competition. Another thing they could have did too was similar to Project Runway. If you have watched the show as many years as I have, they used to do a pre-season part of the competition in which they showed people auditioning for Project Runway and showed them showing their designs. You showed a little bit more about the designers themselves. With On Brand, we just kind of jumped right into it. We will just, introduce these 10 creatives and jump right into the competition piece of the series. I would love to see that built in more for next season so we can kind of extend the season out because it did feel a little short since there were 2 episodes per week. I would love to see that stretched out a bit more and give us more time with these people so we can learn more about who they are and their creativity. Another thing in terms of their background I was unaware of, people like Elijah. I didn't learn until deep into the season that he has a degree in filmmaking, which made so much sense when it came to the Captain Morgan competition. By us knowing that ahead of time, it would have gave us a chance to say, hey, maybe, Elijah could bring his talents here. Maybe this can work. Same thing with Sabrina. Sabrina was promoted as a realtor, but we didn't know. It was mentioned briefly on the show that she had a marketing degree. We also did not know that she is a momager to her influencer daughter, which made so much sense when they had the Sonic competition with the crack-a-lackin' drink that they created. It made sense, but again, by not having that background, we weren't able to learn about who Sabrina is at the core as a creative. The final industry lesson here, storytelling builds emotional connection, whether it's a contestant or a campaign. When we understand the why behind someone's work, we can invest in their journey. In our second marketing takeaway, let's talk about showcasing the craft of marketing and the people who do it. While the show did feature Bozoma Saint John as a CMO, which I highly respect her, I would like to see her more as a mentor in terms of the Tim Gunn way, or even now in the modern sense, the Christian Siriano way of the competition. We really didn't see her engage a lot with the contestants. I would have loved to see her when they were putting together their pitches more, giving feedback, helping them come up with a pitch that was dynamic enough to really be competitive and go head to head with front runners like Bianca and also Ryan. Another thing, outside of the pitches, there were only a few moments on camera that provided insights about marketing terms people were unfamiliar with. There are a lot of marketing dynamic not variables, you guys, my bad. There's a lot of things in marketing with vocabulary that people can get confused by. We call it the marketing jargon that we speak. Not everyone who lives in the creative world really experiences marketing the way someone who may be on the strategy side does. So by not taking the time to really explain those terms, those phrases, and things like that, it didn't really give the audience a chance to be really educated about what it takes to put together a pitch, a campaign deck, or even, execute something at that level, because we didn't understand the holistic piece of it. If they would have took more time to slow down, to really break it down a little bit more, maybe doing an extra bonus episode behind the scenes about what it takes to build that standing campaign like that up, I really would think that they have a bit more meat and potatoes when it comes to these marketing episodes, and also showing the power of building a campaign. Also, the show, and I think I mentioned this already, it appears to move too fast. 45 minutes is not enough. 45 minutes is not enough. I love an extended episode that's at least an hour some change, that really allows you to dive deeper into the creative process. It may take a little longer. You may not be able to have as big of an audience at first, but when you do that, you also show respect to the creative process. When it comes to marketing on my end, things that I do to build out a campaign, it takes me sometimes 6 months working backwards to take a campaign from ideation to completion. And that's not saying that I can't do it faster, but because of the amount of people that I have to work with across departments, that amount of work takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of thinking through, and also sometimes retooling before it even goes to market to make sure it is effective. When the show moves that fast, it dilutes the process. It dilutes the amount of work it takes. I would also love to see collaboration with the design team, with the folks who are putting these activations together, with all the people who are what's the word I'm looking for, y'all? I just say the plain word, important. See, there goes me with that marketing jargon. I could just say it important, but I was trying to use big words, and here we are. But important to the entire process. By not showing us those people, we really didn't see all the folks they had to collaborate with to take their campaign from pitch to completion. And then also, just a note as well, while Jimmy Fallon's humor is welcome, it's a fun piece of the show, I don't think he needs to be included in every single piece of the episode. I think he should be there to introduce the actual project or brand that they'll be partnering with, and maybe show up during the end where they have to actually judge, or they're eliminating someone from the competition. I do think it was a bit of a distraction. It's great to have him from a star power quality, but we're not just focusing on star power here. We're focusing on impact. We're focusing on creativity. We're focusing on marketing. And here, we need more strategy and less humor. Finally, for that industry lesson, executional excellence matters. Knowing the tools, the framework, and the creative process behind campaigns will make the show both entertaining and educational. And in our final marketing takeaway, and again, I am not being shady, these are notes. This is feedback. If you guys don't know, in marketing, in every campaign, you do a campaign debrief. The campaign debrief tells you about the wins, it tells you about the areas of opportunity, and what you can do to improve the campaign going forward. All I'm doing with this is noting what can be improved going forward to make it a competition series that has the same amount of legs as, say, like, again, a Project Runway, a Shark Tank, Top Chef, and other shows centered around creativity. If you don't take the feedback that's given to you during a campaign debrief, sometimes your campaign may run stale, it may run flat, it may not perform as well as it did before. And when you choose not to listen, that campaign that used to have a lot of eyes on it, the number of eyes starts to dwindle. The impact starts to dwindle. The numbers fall flat. And then the money that was put behind amplifying that campaign may not be there for the next 2, 3, 4 campaigns, especially if it's something that's annual or a seasonal campaign. This feedback will help on brand, in my opinion, have that staying power that I want to see them have in the competition series for reality TV space. So when it comes to representation in the future of marketing, while I enjoy seeing big brands like Dunkin' Donuts, Southwest, and Therabody, to name a few, I would have loved to see smaller brands featured. I would love to see Black and minority owned brands featured, because it's not just the big corporations that have impact. Marketing is not just about pushing the next big thing, the next big product. It's also about amplifying the little guys, the people who may not have a bajillion followers on social media, but have community impact, have purpose behind their work. Sometimes they need amplification as well. They need a big platform to be able to show who they are, and partnering with them would give a better visibility for the show, and also would show their investment in greater communities outside of those corporate spaces. For example, if we were to see, even though she has an awesome platform already, Tracee Ellis Ross Pattern. Pattern is a hair care brand that she started, that she founded, that she owns. I would love to see a partnership with a Pattern or a similar Black-owned hair care brand. I would love to see a minority-owned clothing brand featured, or even a brand that's like led by inclusive executives like Universal Standard. I would have loved to see them featured a lot more. Another thing I noticed on the show that's a area of opportunity, a lot of the executives, y'all, they were white. And pretends to be shocked is the name of the game, because I know this already about marketing. There's not a lot of representation at the top. The higher up you get, the less diverse it is. While you may have women, which there were women represented on the show, to be fair, in terms of the executives or senior leadership feature, the only Black woman who was included as part of the show was for Captain Morgan. And I'm thinking, out of all those brands, no one noticed something was missing. No one noticed that there was a problem in terms of not featuring um, inclusive communities, not featuring diverse communities at the executive leadership level, because that says a lot also about the problem that exists in marketing, that you can only get up so high for a lot of people of color. And then after that, it dilutes and it becomes either all male, or you may have a sprinkle of women on top. But even thinking about it from a broader standard, when it comes to the future of the industry is changing so much. We need to lean more into inclusive communities. We need to lean more into inclusive messaging. When you don't have the right people in the room, that's when those marketing pitfalls and campaign mistakes happen. When you don't have diverse voices included, you don't have the right structure needed to amplify your campaigns forward. Another thing that could be improved too, by having diverse voices in the room, those who are pitching the ideas, who come from different diverse communities, could have had their pitches more understood, or could have leaned more into their cultural context of who they were, to pitch an idea that was a bit more out of the box, outside of what would be acceptable in corporate spaces. I loved how On Brand exposed the reality of what exists in this field, but it also exposed the reality of what we could do better to really bring inclusion and belonging to the front of the room, instead of just keeping her in the back, pouring lemonade and taking notes. So for our industry lesson here, let's realize that inclusive marketing is not optional. It is strategic. Campaigns resonate when the decision makers mirror the audience's lived experiences. The reason why, when I'm working on my campaigns, it feels authentic to me is because I'm pouring in my experience from my community and the communities that I am allies of, to include it in the messaging. I'm not just looking at it from a one-centered point of view. Marketing and creativity is not one-centered. It is a holistic point of view that allows you to open up a broader landscape in the way that you think. When you only have tunnel vision to see your lived experience, you are initially, just be real, ignoring the lived experiences of others. That's why marketing is so important. You cannot be what you can't see. Marketing's job initially is to visually tell people what they can do for these campaigns, for like careers, lifestyles, things like that. Marketing sends a message. The message is very powerful. The message can be something that's told to them over and over and over again through strategic messaging, to the point you start to believe this is the limitation of who I am, or these are the limits that I don't have, because I see myself being something even greater outside of the bubble that's been created for me. for me, essentially too, when I look at the work that I do in marketing, I always want people to be able to see themselves. I always want it to be a source of empowerment. I think On Brand could do a much better job of showcasing that empowerment in the message of marketing and making sure that those communities are being centered in the focus. Do something around diversity. Do something around, I don't know, talking about the inequities that we face in this industry. Do something around things like when it comes to maybe working with like a school, like, doing like a school day where they help to teach the students how to market their program or their club or something like that. Do a community centered aspect of the show to really show the power of what marketing can do when it's used the right way. Marketing as a tool can manipulate an audience, but marketing as a tool can also empower them as well. So for that overall rating of the season, and again, I am not being shady, I'm just being honest here, I would give it a 6.5 out of 10. I would give it a 6.5 out of 10. And here's why. Here's why. Here's why. It felt more like a 45-minute commercial than an actual show. Like I said before, other shows like Project Runway, while as a competition series, they did partnerships with, like last season, they did Wicked. They've done other partnerships as well with different brands, companies, and movies that were launching as part of their rollout. It never felt like a commercial the entire time. It was centered on the designers. It was centered on the talent. It was centered on the competition. On Brand felt like I was watching a very long commercial that had a sprinkle for some razzle dazzle of marketing included in it. I would love next season for that to kind of dial back a bit. I also think the way the show is shot is a little too lighthearted. It's kind of like too office style in the way that it's shot. It's fun, it's bright, great, but give me something that feels more grounded, that feels more serious, that doesn't feel so lighthearted that I'm taking the importance out of the work that's being executed. If season 2, and again, me being honest, if season 2 digs deeper into the craft, if it digs deeper into the people and deeper into the representation with the brands, as well as the leadership that's represented for those brands, the show has what it takes to have longevity. We don't know if the show will be renewed as of yet, but considering as NBC and that Jimmy Fallon is attached to it, I don't think it's going to be one and done in terms of a season. I do think they'll probably give it a couple more seasons to see, if it has legs or longevity. But considering that who is attached to in terms of a network, it's probably not going to go away. I do hope they retool for next season to make it more impactful and to keep viewers interested and engaged and curious about the field of marketing and creativity. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed today's chat. Don't forget to follow Coffee with Yvonne on Instagram and Threads at Coffee with Yvonne. You can find me on my personal account where I cut up in real life. This is who I am. This is who I am in real life. You can find that on Instagram and TikTok, aka the Clock app, at Yvonne_creative marketer. And to learn more about me and my business that I own, you can go ahead and go to pinkdollhousemarketing.com, or you can go on Instagram. You can slide in my DMs. It's totally cool at pinkdollhousemarketing. And creators, I'm going to tell you this every week. Until you get it. Remember to keep showing up, keep creating, and that your voice matters. I cannot wait to chat with you soon on another episode of Coffee with Yvonne. Okay, bye! Coffee with Yvonne is produced and edited by Yvonne Pearson. Coffee with Yvonne is created by Pink Doll House Marketing. You can catch the latest episodes by subscribing to Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.